The NFL is back, baby, and betting is live in 38 U.S. states, and football fans in those states are betting big, wagering more than $35 billion on the 2024 NFL season, according to the American Gaming Association. How is the industry evolving? What trends are emerging in this new NFL season? Mike Raffensperger is the president of FanDuel Sports, joins us now at the New York Stock Exchange. Mike, I cannot believe that number. It just blows your mind. $35 billion, that's up 30% year over year. Yeah. How do you account for that type of growth?
Look, I think in a lot of ways this is fairly common sense. Regulation, legalization of online gaming has been something that people have been doing in unregulated and illegal ways. Bringing it into the regulated shore market with innovative products and customer service like FanDuel has been great, and people really respond to it. They like it. Coupled with every year, regularly, more states are legalizing, regulating, and taxing online sports betting, and so kind of that natural market growth of the addressable market growing, but at the same time, just continued, I think, proliferation of great experiences like FanDuel that people are taking advantage of.
I think only 3 states came online in the last year, so you think a lot of that movement is from the illegal channels to legal sports avenues?
I think what you find when a new state comes online, you see a massive shift from illegal channels into legal channels like FanDuel. In older states, even New Jersey, which is at this point the oldest online sports betting state, it regulated in 2018. It was the first to do so. We still see meaningful growth in the customers who have signed up with us, and we're still seeing new customers acquire at a pretty regular clip. Yeah. So, you know, we have a joke that we call New Jersey the mature state, but I'm not sure one growing at the rate that it is qualified as mature.
Has the spreading out of the NFL season, and my wife likes to say, it's on every damn night, has that helped the sports books? Because now there are many more nights, more occasions.
Yeah, I think, look, they added another week to the schedule, so that one was huge.
Thank you, Roger.
Incremental inventory, and certainly adds to the sort of overall consumption of the game. And generally speaking, the more people are consuming the content, the more they're betting, and vice versa. The more that they're betting, the more content they're consuming. So that is quite symbiotic. I think generally you can get a ton of, when there's a one weekly game, so a Monday night, a Thursday night, a Sunday night, and most recently now a Friday night, there is a real sort of unique, I think, collective social focus on that that does, pop a little bit more so than maybe the typical schedule.
And this year, 2 Wednesday games. You're welcome, everybody. Christmas on Netflix. I assume that will see a nice little odd betting bump on Christmas Day. I don't know if you've gamed that out.
No, we're actually really excited. We are the partner of Netflix on Christmas Day, so we will be sponsor advertiser and joining, the best gift anybody can have on December 25th, which is more NFL football.
Oh, my wife will probably leave me the day after. Week 1 also averaged 21 million viewers per game. That's a new record. Is gambling at all driving the television ratings? Yeah. Other than Taylor Swift, I can't figure out what's new to drive ratings up.
So we've actually done some partnership with Nielsen that looks specifically at the correlated values between betting and legal markets, illegal markets. And you do find, actually, in places that have a more liberalized and pervasive online gaming, you do see more ratings and consumption of the content. And as well as not just sort of the tune-ins themselves, people are watching the games longer. So even if something is a blowout, if you've got a player prop or maybe you've got a parlay where different elements are clicking, it keeps your interest level in that game higher. And so we've certainly seen a lot of that correlation. And then actually directly, we've done some partnerships with the leagues themselves where they have over-the-top products like League Pass, et cetera, where we've been co-promoting that. And we've actually seen really interesting data where, again, really high correlation between as people bet and watch, both of those go up at the same time.
You mentioned in-game betting, player props. Is that where the growth is? Is that where gambling is moving to, as opposed to those of us that still bet really point spreads and parlays?
Yeah, it has been remarkable over the last few years, sort of the shifting amount of, we call it bet mix, so just what are people betting on, away from the core markets of who's going to win, what's the spread, what's the point total, ahead of the game, to huge interest in players, what those props are, particularly those that are happening live during the game. And so a very meaningful percentage of our handle, which is really just means that the amount that people have bet on our platform, is taking place live. And the NFL and the NBA in particular really over-index in the amount of player propositions, so specific bets on players as opposed to the teams or just the game outcome itself.
The number I mentioned earlier, 35 billion, remarkable in particular, given that the two biggest states by population are still not legal. California with 3 NFL teams, Texas with 2. How far away are they?
Look,
if at all.
I have learned not to prognosticate on exactly when states, come online. Clearly, we're very interested in those states and have a large sort of regulatory and lobbying process across the United States, of which Texas and California are part of.
Do you have any estimate about the size of those states, potentially?
I mean, it mirrors the population, as you said. So, I mean, California is the 5th biggest country in the world. And so from a kind of overall economic standpoint, that would be the largest. And then Texas, I think, after New York, would be the 3rd.
We're strictly talking NFL betting here, but is there any sport that even comes close in the rearview mirror to the NFL?
Well, interestingly, the NBA is a bigger source of our revenue than the NFL, if you believe it or not.
I do not.
So the NFL, we acquire more new customers. When someone tries sports betting on FanDuel,
Total handle is bigger.
For the first time, total handle on the NBA is bigger.
Wow.
It's because of the number of games. The amount of basketball that is played in the regular season is so much larger. Now, any individual NFL game will be much larger than an individual NBA game, but given the way the NBA is scheduled, it winds up being a larger contributor to our revenue.
All right, what's the next evolution, do you think, in sports betting? We just mentioned the in-game, the player props. Where's it going?
Yeah. Look, I think you will see a continuation of those trends. And for me, it's really how do we continue to innovate? One of the things that I think FanDuel has done so well is innovate the user experience in our product. So how are you, when there is this huge universe of choice of all these different player propositions, and let's say you're in a live game and you only have so much time to get it down, what is the actual user experience where people can find, discover, and place those bets as seamlessly and as fun as possible?
Okay, some new players in the space, Fanatics in particular. What does that mean for the environment, and does that mean more incentives to get new players?
Yeah. Look, this will be the most competitive NFL season we have ever had. It really is a important moment for the industry. Like I said, there's no sport like the NFL that drives new customer acquisition. We'll acquire more people whose first bet is on the NFL, more so than any other sport. I'm really proud of FanDuel's leadership position, where we control just shy of 50% of the market. Our next largest competitor is, somewhere in the mid-30s. I think it's been challenging for other entrants to carve out, part of this, and how do they build a sustainable value proposition. But at the same time, we're, I think, really respectful of it being a hugely competitive space, which is why we're always investing in our product and our capabilities to win on a customer proposition of a great product experience with great value.
Because of all that, your stock at Flutter is up more than 20% year to date, more than $35 billion market cap. Is this now an investable space for the folks here?
I mean, sitting here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, where we listed in America, Flutter, I think January of this year, we're certainly incredibly excited by the momentum we have behind the business, and I think the best is yet to come.
Many a day we walk in here to Gronk all over the signage here. Mike Raffensperger's the president of FanDuel Sports. Good to see you, sir.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Generally speaking, quoting former NFL star Antonio Brown is an awful idea, but as AB did say, business is booming for the NFL like never before. From streaming to private equity, global domination, the NFL is literally everywhere, every day, on every service. Andrew Brandt covers that. He's the host of the Business of Sports podcast. He's the author of the Sunday 7 newsletter and executive director of the Morad Center for Sports Law at Villanova. Great to have you on, sir. Always appreciate your work. You almost have as many jobs as the NFL as streaming packages, so let's start there. This season, we have an exclusive streaming game every week. Netflix is the new addition, 2 Christmas Day games. Is this how the league hits that target of $20 billion in revenue?
Yeah, Dave, great to be with you. The business is always booming, even when the games are going on. It's like the games are the storefront, but it's really just a $20+ billion business, as you mentioned. The media, I just can't shake my head enough. They did a deal, as everyone knows, for cumulative media deals totaling 110 billion a couple years ago. That was with the traditional networks of CBS, NBC, Fox, and of course ESPN, and a new network streamer, Amazon Thursday Night Football. We've now become ingrained that Thursday Night Football is on Amazon. It's a streamer. We just accept that. Think how different that is from just a few years ago. And as you mentioned, Netflix joining the party on Christmas. We have NBC Peacock joining the party with playoff games. You've got to find NFL everywhere, and people do. That's the thing. More so than any other sports property in the world, people find it, and this is the NFL's diabolical plan. They sell off $110 billion of media deals, and then they pick off inventory from that to resell for more inventory and more prices. Christmas games for $75 million each. Black Friday game for $150 million. And the Peacock game, and this and that. It's just amazing how the NFL does this because the appetite, Dave, is insatiable. It's the most prosperous and profitable league in the history of sports.
Andrew, my wife was with me supporting my NFL problem habit for 25 years until this year. It was that Friday Peacock subscription, the game in Brazil, and now the Netflix. It finally broke her. Do you sense any blowback? Is there a point in which the NFL hits oversaturation?
Well, I've talked about that game. You see my Packers helmet, and I'm obviously still a Packers fan for my 10 years there. And I like the Eagles as well. That was a game in Brazil on Peacock on a Friday night before the season starts. Think about all those things. I just have to say, there was this quote-unquote rule that the NFL couldn't program on Friday nights because of this high school deference to high school football. But there's a loophole in that. This is from 1961 Sports Broadcasting Act. If it falls before the second Friday of September, you can do it. And we had this early Labor Day this year, and of course, the NFL did it. Friday night football, which we won't see again for many years if they are deferential to that Friday night football in high school games. But yeah, I empathize with your wife. Luckily, mine stayed with me. She's still, tolerating this. But yeah, as a football fan in a marriage or in a relationship, you've got to be selective. I mean, it's just everywhere. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it pays your bills, so that's what I'm sure ultimately your wife can understand. So Netflix, you mentioned the two games on Christmas Day. They're worth nearly what ABC, NBC, CBS, and Disney are combined, which of course owns ESPN. Amazon and Apple are $2 and $3 trillion companies. How long do you think before the league simply puts dollars over viewers and moves away from broadcast?
We have to talk about Netflix and the Christmas games we just talked about. They have made their initial whet their appetite, toe in the water buy with the NFL. Dave, I think this is just the beginning. I think Netflix, their next foray in the NFL will be a lot bigger. It's not far out-fetched right now that one day the lead programmers for the NFL will not be CBS, NBC, Fox. They will be Amazon. They will be whatever YouTube, which now has Sunday Ticket, could expand. It's just that the prices are going so high. We're going to talk about franchise evaluations in a minute. But wow, media valuations. Can these legacy companies, like CBS owned by Paramount, like NBC owned by Comcast, can they continue to play this game when the prices have soared out of what they usually have paid in the past? So it's not out of the realm that the Amazons and the other streamers will be the primary broadcasters in the future.
The other big business story, of course, is the league turning on the private equity stream. Ultimately, what's the impact, given a cap of 10% ownership on any one team? And where do you think fans, if at all, could see the impact?
Well, let's start there. They're not going to see much. Let's just cut away with the idea that some private equity money person firm is going to decide what plays to call, who to sign in free agency, how to run the team. That's off. Because 10%, as you mentioned, is the maximum. There's other restrictions the NFL put on this that are not in the NBA and NHL and Major League Baseball. 10% compared to 30% on those leagues. You have to own it for 6 years. And here's the kicker. Once they sell, the NFL is getting a little profit share of that. I couldn't believe when I read that, but yes. So what this means, Dave, is they needed equity from passive institutional money for these massive franchise valuations. If people don't know, the most recent sale, the Washington Commanders, was over $6 billion. That's astounding. Because 2 years ago, it was $4.6 billion. And 2 years before that, it was $2.2 billion, the Panthers. So it's just amazing, the skyrocketing escalation of these franchise values. You have to support that. And in terms of individuals, I'll tell you a little story. I had a friend, I'm from Washington, D.C. He got a prospectus from the Washington Commanders group. And he calls me and he says, Andrew, it looks like they want about $200 million. And all I get is good seats and a parking place. And I said, that's about right. Because $200 million, think about that. $200 million is 3% of $6 billion. So you're not going to get a lot of individuals paying that to get a parking pass. So what you have is institutional money because they're in it for the long term. They're in it for when that $6 billion franchise sells for $20 billion in 25 years, that's when they care.
Okay, another source of revenue we mentioned, global domination, the Friday game in Brazil. We still have 4 more international games this season, Munich and London. To what end are these international games? Will we ever see an international franchise?
Besides London, I think these games are kind of diversions. Obviously Brazil, maybe Germany, it's just all soccer. And you just want to get a full house for that 1 or maybe 2 games. And I think that's working. I think the NFL will continue to expand internationally for what I call one-offs. We're not going to see more than a game a year in Brazil. We're not going to see more than a game a year in Mexico City and wherever else, and it'll sell out as it has been. But this idea of an international team or international conference, I don't see it. First of all, logistics, it could never be equally competitively balanced with the other teams. And the other thing is, I don't think it's sustain it. Maybe London, but I don't even think that for a week after week of crowds, because again, it's not the primary sport, it's a diversion. And I don't think that'll be sustained. I do think we'll go from, as you said, 4 games or 5 games a year to 8 games. And then you'll have 16 teams, every team playing in an international game every other year.
Andrew Brandt, the host of Business of Sports podcast, the author of the Sunday 7 newsletter, the executive director of the Morad Center for Sports Law at Villanova. Awesome to have you. Thanks so much.
Great to be with you, Dave. Thanks.
Beyond the Kansas City Chiefs' most marketable dynamic duo of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, one might argue the next 4 most popular players no longer play. In no particular order, Peyton and Eli Manning, Jason Kelce, and of course, the GOAT, Tom Brady. Documenting Brady's off-field endeavors is a full-time job, and frankly, it is an art form for Shadow Lion Studios co-founder Gilad Haas. Good to see you, sir. So we will discuss these incredible projects with TB12 in just a minute. Let's start with, though, Mahomes, the obvious one. Who are the other players that you think 10 years from now could be household names, familiar family room faces in terms of building their brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. 2 people jump to mind in particular. I think one is someone like CJ Stroud, who's having a lot of success down in Houston, obviously coming in as a rookie, overperforming, getting that offensive rookie of the year. I think he's someone in a great market like Houston who could really capitalize and build a great platform around himself. 2 others that jump into my mind too, we're seeing the success of Jaden Daniels in Washington. taking a franchise like that and kind of really putting it on the map in such an exciting way that his play seems to continue to improve week to week. I think he's someone who could really build that out. And then another one who maybe different from the norm of the quarterback side is someone like a Micah Parsons. And I think what we're seeing him do, with his podcast and the show that he's doing week to week, obviously in the limelight there in Dallas and America's team, so if you will, I think he has someone that could, has a great personality, continuously performs on the field, and could really leverage that into building a great platform around himself.
Yeah, following the Kelce brothers in the podcast space, certainly a good deal right now. It's surprising, though, when you look at the landscape, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, probably the biggest stars in the game, but are not familiar family room faces, are not really building brands across multiple platforms. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you have a specific window when you're out, playing professionally. And so I think within that window, you really want to capitalize and build a platform for yourself to do what you want to do post-playing. So I think all of those guys you just mentioned, all of the folks in particular, guys like, Justin Jefferson, Josh Allen, people who really have, show their personality at every corner, whether it's a commercial or social, those are folks that, certainly could be building a large platform, channels for themselves to be leveraging, post-playing days.
What should players be doing to almost follow the footsteps of Brady in terms of storytelling, in terms of multiple platforms?
First thing that jumps into my mind is maintaining authenticity. I think that was always something we aimed. That was something Tom always spoke about, but just being incredibly authentic with your channel. And that ultimately means you're going to be building something sincere and genuine that will never change. So I would say, being authentic and then, having content that is platform specific. So the content you're putting on TikTok should be different than the content that necessarily is going on your Instagram versus your X channel. I think being specific around the platforms, YouTube is a great space for longer form content. So I think creating content that people want and meeting them where they are, where they're consuming it is, obviously a smart strategy. So I think that's an opportunity for a lot of these athletes.
Interesting. And when you started working with Thomas more than 15 years ago, he was just on Facebook, and quite frankly, they dominated all social media. If you had to pick one platform that is the most important in terms of your brand, your storytelling, what is it today?
YouTube all the way. I think YouTube would be the top one for me. That's where people, I think, are if you're a young person or even remotely young, when you go home and you turn on your smart TV, so many people now aren't necessarily going to Netflix or Amazon or whatever. They are watching those channels, but they are also watching YouTube from a laid-back entertainment standpoint. So I'd say YouTube is a massive opportunity that I still think is open for everyone. I think it ultimately comes down to creating content that you would want to watch is likely going to be effective for other people to come and watch it as well. But just to give you a two-part answer there, I think YouTube is a huge opportunity in the long-form space. And I think no doubt, TikTok is the opportunity and the fastest growing platform right now where you can hop on, make great content and build a really big audience by just making really great short form storytelling and content.
Really appreciate the conversation. Shadow Lions Creative Studios co-founder Gilad Haas. Really enjoyed it, my friend. Thanks so much.